What if I told you a woman walked into courtroom 4B owing exactly $4,200 in rent, and before that hearing was over, even the bailiff had to look away so nobody would see his eyes fill up? Drop a comment telling us right now what you think a judge should do when the law says one thing, but basic human decency says another. It was supposed to be a routine eviction. 5 minutes, maybe 7. One more name called. One more family pushed out. Hit that subscribe button if you believe some courtroom stories say more about a country than any headline ever could. But at 9:12 on a gray Thursday morning in Fulton County Magistrate Court, Atlanta, Georgia, everything changed. Like this video if you believe justice is at its best when it sees the full person, not just the paperwork. Because the woman standing at the defense table that morning looked, to almost everyone watching, like the kind of tenant they thought they already understood. And if you stay with me, you'll see why what happened next became the kind of story people never forget. Share this with someone who needs to see that mercy and accountability can live in the same room. Her name was Alicia Monroe, 31 years old, 5'4", tired in a way that had settled into her bones. She wore a faded Old Navy cardigan over a white scrub top, black slacks that had been hemmed by hand, and a pair of Payless flats with a split seam on the right shoe that she kept tucking under the table whenever anyone looked her way. Her hair was pulled into a quick bun that had started to loosen in the Atlanta humidity. There was a coffee stain on the edge of her manila folder. Her wedding finger was bare, but the pale band around it still told a story. In the parking lot outside sat her 2008 Toyota Corolla with a cracked left taillight, a school pickup line tag still hanging from the rearview mirror, and 2 booster seats in the back. Alicia lived, or rather was trying not to stop living, at Edgewood Court Apartments on Memorial Drive. Unit 2C1 bedroom, peeling ceiling, weak air conditioning, a front window that didn't fully lock unless you shoved a butter knife into the frame. The kind of place landlords called affordable and tenants called all we had. Across from her stood Victor Halpern, owner of Halpern Residential Holdings, age 48, wearing a Brooks Brothers tie the color of burnt wine, a silver watch that caught every fluorescent light in the room, and the expression of a man who had already moved on emotionally from the outcome he was about to demand. His lawyer, Brenda Cole, had a leather portfolio, a neat low bun, and that dangerous kind of politeness some attorneys use when they think the case is beneath them. The gallery had maybe 20 people in it that morning, 2 college interns, 3 tenants waiting on their own cases, an older woman with a quilted purse, a deputy near the side wall, a young man with a plumbing company polo who kept checking his phone. Nobody expected this docket number to matter. Case 25M11847. Halpern Residential Holdings versus Alicia Monroe, dispossessory, arrears claimed $4,200, late fees included, court costs added, immediate possession requested. The clerk called the matter. Alicia stood. "Ms. Monroe," Judge Elena Marquez said, voice steady, "are you prepared to proceed today?" Judge Marquez was 52, former legal aid attorney, former assistant county counsel, known across the courthouse for never raising her voice because she never needed to. She wore rimless glasses low on her nose and carried herself with the calm of someone who had seen every kind of excuse, every kind of lie, every kind of tragedy, and refused to confuse one for the other. Her hair was silver at the temples, neatly pinned. Her black robe looked sharp even at the cuffs. People said she could end a room with a sentence. Alicia swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." Victor didn't even look at her. Brenda Cole did the talking. "Your Honor, my client seeks possession of the premises and a judgment in the amount of $4,200 for unpaid rent and fees spanning May through September of 2025. We have submitted the ledger, lease, notice to quit, and proof of service." Clean, simple, standard. Judge Marquez looked at Alicia. "Do you dispute the amount?" And that was when the first thing happened. The thing that made half the room decide who Alicia Monroe was before they knew the first true thing about her. Alicia lifted her chin and said, too sharply, too fast, "I dispute all of it." The gallery shifted. Brenda Cole gave the smallest smile. Judge Marquez asked, "All of it?" "Yes, ma'am. Every fake fee, every lie, every day they left my kids breathing that poison." The word poison hit the room like something dropped on tile. Victor finally turned. "That's absurd." Alicia pointed at him. "You want your money, tell them about the mold." There it was, defiance, anger, the ND people often mistake for dishonesty. The kind frightened people use when dignity is the only thing they still own. Brenda Cole sighed in a way designed to be heard. "Your Honor, we object to this turning into a theatrical performance. The issue is rent." And for one long second, it looked like this would go exactly the way everyone expected. Judge narrows issue. Tenant gets emotional. Landlord gets possession. Another family stacks their life in trash bags by sunset. But Judge Marquez didn't reach for the gavel. She leaned back, took off her glasses, and looked directly at Alicia. "Ms. Monroe," she said, "this is still a court of law. If you want me to hear you, you will slow down and tell the truth in order. Can you do that?" Alicia's throat moved. "Yes." "Good, because anger is not evidence. But sometimes," the judge said, settling her glasses back on, "it points toward where the evidence is buried." That line moved through the room like electricity. Drop a comment if you've ever seen someone judged by the worst 5 seconds of their life. Because what came next made everybody question their first impression. Alicia took a breath and opened the manila folder with shaking hands. Not dramatic shaking. Not movie shaking. The kind of trembling people get when they haven't eaten since 6 a.m. and haven't slept properly in 3 months, and no one wrong sentence could put their children in a car by nightfall. Inside were school attendance slips, hospital discharge papers, a maintenance request log, 2 inhaler receipts from CVS, a city inspection complaint form, and a crayon drawing folded so many times the corners had gone soft. Judge Marquez glanced down. "Start with May." Alicia nodded. "I paid May on the 3rd, money order. They credited it late, then charged a fee." Brenda Cole said, "The ledger reflects a partial payment." Alicia snapped. "Because your office split it between rent and some made-up water bill after my ceiling leaked for 2 weeks." "Ms. Monroe," Judge Marquez warned. "I'm sorry," Alicia closed her eyes. "I'm sorry, Your Honor." "Start over," the judge said. Alicia did, and slowly, one fact at a time, the picture began to shift. She worked nights as a phlebotomist at Grady Memorial Hospital. Not a nurse, though people always assumed she was. She drew blood, 12-hour shifts, Fridays through Sundays whenever she could get them. She had 2 children. Noah, 7, first grade, loved dinosaurs and hated loud hand dryers. Daisy, 4, still slept with a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. Their father, Terrence Monroe, had left 18 months earlier after what Alicia described in the plainest terms possible. He found easier people to disappoint. Until April, Alicia had never been more than 10 days late on rent. Then the leak started. Not a dripping faucet leak, not a bucket under the pipe leak, a dark brown water spreading through the ceiling leak. It began above the bathroom vent and crept into the hallway ceiling. Maintenance came once, sprayed bleach, painted over a stain, and told her to keep the fan on. Then the smell started, damp, sweet, rotting, wrong. Noah's coughing got worse in May. By June, Alicia said the wall behind the bedroom dresser had bloomed into black and green patches. She took pictures. She emailed the leasing office. She texted the property manager. She filed maintenance requests on June 11, June 19, June 27, July 3, and July 8. No full remediation. No relocation. No working dehumidifier. Just a maintenance man named Eddie who told her, "They don't replace drywall unless it's visible from the hallway." The older woman in the gallery muttered, "Lord." Victor's face stayed blank. Judge Marquez held out a hand. "You have photos." Alicia nodded and stepped forward, handing them to the bailiff, Marcus Dean, who passed them to the bench. Marcus was a former Marine with broad shoulders and the kind of stillness that seemed permanent. He barely reacted to anything. Not then. Not yet. Judge Marquez studied the first photo, then the second, then the third. The images were ugly, a little blurry, phone camera shots taken under bad light, but even from the defense table, the dark stains were obvious. One shot showed Noah's Spider-Man blanket pushed against a wall veined with black mold. Another showed a plastic grocery bag taped over an air vent. Another showed a mushroom-like growth near the baseboard by the closet door. Brenda Cole immediately stepped in. "Your Honor, we have no foundation for these images, no chain of custody." Judge Marquez cut her off without changing tone. "Counselor, if your position is that the apartment was in perfect condition, I strongly advise you not to make me ask the next question before I have heard the answer." Even Brenda went quiet. Alicia's voice softened. "I kept asking them to move us. I told them Noah's asthma was getting bad. They said if I broke the lease, I'd owe even more." Victor finally spoke. "That is not company policy." Alicia laughed once, harsh, empty. "Company policy doesn't sleep with mold in its lungs." Another line people in that room would repeat later. Judge Marquez asked, "Did you stop paying rent because of these conditions?" Alicia looked at the floor. "No, not at first." That answer mattered. You could feel it. It made her more believable because it made her less perfect. "I kept paying until Noah got sick," she said. There it was, the first edge of the cliff. The gallery stopped shifting. Brenda stopped writing. Victor's jaw tightened. And when Judge Marquez asked the next question, you could hear the old HVAC hum in the courtroom ceiling. "How sick?" Alicia opened the folder again and pulled out a paper with hospital letterhead. "He stopped breathing right on my kitchen floor on August 28th at 6:43 in the morning." Nobody moved. If you think landlords should answer for what happens behind the walls they ignore, hit that like button right now. The narrator in your head practically whispered, because this was the point where a routine rent case stopped being about rent at all. Alicia said Noah had been coughing all night. She assumed it was another asthma flare. She had given him a nebulizer treatment at 2:15 a.m., then another at 5:50. At 6:43, while she was warming oatmeal in a dented saucepan, she heard the bowl drop. He was on the kitchen linoleum, blue around the lips, eyes wide, not making enough sound. Daisy started screaming. Alicia called 911 from a phone with 8% battery and no protective case because the old one had cracked months earlier. She gave chest rubs like the dispatcher told her. The paramedics from Station 14 arrived in 6 minutes, which felt like 6 years. One of them carried Noah out wrapped in a faded dinosaur comforter because Alicia hadn't had time to find his jacket. She drove behind the ambulance in the Corolla with Daisy still in pink pajamas, no shoes, rabbit in hand. At Grady Pediatric Emergency, Noah was treated for acute respiratory distress. The discharge summary noted severe asthma exacerbation with environmental trigger suspected. Alicia placed that paper on the evidence table like it weighed more than the courthouse. Judge Marquez read it carefully. Brenda Cole tried to recover ground. "Your Honor, suspected environmental trigger is not a legal determination that this property caused." "Did your client inspect after the complaint?" Judge Marquez asked. Brenda hesitated. "Maintenance visited the unit." "Did a licensed remediation company inspect?" "I would need to verify that." "Then verify it," the judge said. Victor leaned toward Brenda. They whispered. Judge Marquez watched without expression. Alicia stood very still, but you could see the battle happening in her face. This was where pride and humiliation meet. This was where a person decides whether telling the whole truth is worth the risk of being looked at with pity. My son came home with steroids, a stronger inhaler, and a warning, she said. They told me if that apartment was making him worse, I had to get him out. Did you? Judge Marquez asked. Alicia's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back hard enough to look angry again. To where? Silence. That was the question, not rhetorical, not dramatic, just real. To where? Not to family. Alicia's mother had died when Alicia was 19. Her father had been gone long before that. Her sister lived in Macon with 4 kids in a 2-bedroom duplex. Shelters were full. Motels wanted deposits she didn't have. Her coworker Letitia let them stay one weekend on an air mattress, but 3 extra people and 1 wheezing child in a 1-bedroom was not a plan. It was a pause. Judge Marquez asked, "And the rent?" Alicia nodded once. "I fell behind after Noah got out of the hospital. I missed shifts. Then Daisy got an ear infection. Then my transmission slipped. Then school started. Then I know how that sounds." "It sounds expensive," the judge said. A few people in the gallery exhaled at once. The mood changed by inches. But Victor wasn't done. "Your Honor," he said, voice clipped, "none of this changes the fact that my client provided housing for months without payment. We have expenses. We have taxes. We have a mortgage. Hardship does not nullify obligation." That line lit something ugly in the room. Alicia looked at him the way people look at a door that has closed one too many times. "You want to talk about obligation?" Judge Marquez held up a hand. "Not yet." Then she turned to Brenda Cole. "Counselor, your complaint seeks $4,200. Base rent under the lease is what? $1,200 per month. And how much of the claimed amount is late fees, legal fees, or ancillary charges?" Brenda checked the ledger. $980. Judge Marquez looked up. "Nearly a quarter of the claimed sum is penalties." Victor answered before Brenda could. "Standard enforcement." The judge's face did not change, but the temperature in TH's room seemed to drop. "Standard," she repeated softly. "Very well, Ms. Monroe, keep going." This is where the story took its first real turn, because Alicia reached into the folder and produced something nobody expected. A certified letter receipt. Then another. Then a third. All mailed to Halpern Residential Holdings. All signed for. All ignored. The first, dated July 12, 2025, stated the apartment contained visible mold, water intrusion, and a minor child with physician-documented respiratory issues. The second, dated August 3, requested relocation or lease termination without penalty. The third, dated August 30, 2 days after Noah's hospitalization, included the phrase "unsafe for continued occupancy." Brenda took the papers, scanned them, and for the first time that morning, her professional calm cracked just a little. Victor whispered, "Those were handled by management." Alicia said, "Yeah, I know. They handled them by doing nothing." Everyone in the room knew that if there was more, it mattered, and there was more. Judge Marquez asked, "Did the city inspect?" Alicia nodded. "I filed a complaint. They came September 9th. Do you have the report?" Alicia hesitated. "No," she said quietly. "They mailed it after the court date got set. I never got the full copy, just this." She handed over a pink carbon copy complaint slip. Not enough by itself. Not yet. And that was where the case might have stalled. One woman's documents, one landlord's denial, one judge trying to stay inside the rails of procedure. The courtroom was holding its breath. Then the clerk, Melanie Cho, lifted a hand from the side desk. "Your Honor," she said, "there's a late-filed submission that came through the electronic portal at 8:54 a.m. from Fulton County Code Enforcement." The entire room turned. Victor's face changed, not dramatically, just enough, the smallest flicker. The kind that says a person has just realized the hallway they were confidently walking down has a missing floor. Judge Marquez said, "Print it." And if you're still here, you already know this is the moment that separated the people watching from the people who thought they had this case won. The printer on the clerk's desk sounded absurdly loud, page after page, a mechanical rattle that somehow felt like a countdown. Alicia didn't breathe. Victor stared ahead. Brenda rubbed one temple with her finger. Marcus Dean, the bailiff who had seen 1,000 hearings, looked at the printer. When Melanie brought the pages to the bench, Judge Marquez took her time. She read, turned a page, read again. Then she read one sentence a second time. The gallery could hear nothing except paper and air. Finally, the judge looked up. "Mr. Halpern," she said, "were you aware that on September 9th a county inspector documented active water intrusion, visible microbial growth in the bedroom and HVAC vent, and noted the unit as requiring remediation?" Victor's mouth opened, closed. "I'd have to see the report." "You will," Judge Marquez said. "You are looking at it in real time with the rest of us." That was the first revelation that changed everything. And then came the second. Because attached to the code report was a photograph from the inspector's file. A photo taken not by Alicia, not by a tenant, by a county official, sharp, clear, time-stamped. It showed the bedroom wall with black mold spreading behind a child's bed frame. Noah's blue backpack was on the floor in the corner. The room made a sound all at once. Not words, not gasps exactly, more like the involuntary noise people make when denial becomes impossible. Judge Marquez's voice turned quieter, not louder, which somehow made it hit harder. "Counselor, I want an explanation for why a dispossessory was filed on a unit deemed unsafe for occupancy." Brenda stood. "Your Honor, I was not informed of this specific inspection result." Victor said, "The report must not have reached ownership." "Ownership signed for 3 certified letters," Alicia cut in. "Ms. Monroe," the judge warned. Alicia lowered her head. "Sorry." Judge Marquez was still looking at Victor. "Mr. Halpern, do not make the mistake of confusing this court's patience with a lack of attention." That was quote number 1 people would clip and post for weeks. Brenda tried to redirect. "Even if conditions existed, Your Honor, the tenant remained in the premises without tendering full rent." Judge Marquez said, "And even if rent was unpaid, counsel, Georgia law does not transform an unsafe unit into a lawful claim simply because the tenant is poor." Quote number 2. The plumbing company man in the gallery stopped pretending not to listen. The college interns were scribbling like crazy now. This was no longer a docket item. This was a reckoning. Alicia stood there gripping her folder so hard the edges bent. She looked less angry now, more exposed. The kind of exposed people get when the truth finally arrives and they don't know whether it will save them or ruin them. In a different way, Judge Marquez asked, "Ms. Monroe, did you receive any rent assistance during this period?" Alicia nodded slowly. "I was approved for 1 month through Hope Atlanta, $1,800, but they told me the landlord had to verify the balance and accept payment." "Did they?" Alicia laughed bitterly. "They kept saying paperwork was pending." Judge Marquez looked at Victor. "Was it pending?" Victor said nothing. Brenda shuffled the papers faster now. Then she found it, a form small, buried. Her face lost color. The judge noticed, "Counselor." Brenda answered carefully. "It appears there was a payment commitment from Hope Atlanta dated September 14th. Alicia whispered, "They got approved." Brenda did not answer her. Judge Marquez did. "It was approved." Alicia stared, not understanding. The judge continued, "And according to this form, your landlord's office did not finalize receipt because the amount demanded had increased after legal fees." Now the room gasped for real. Victor leaned forward. That is standard accounting practice. Judge Marquez turned to him. A nonprofit offered $1,800 toward keeping a single mother and 2 children housed, while a county report documented dangerous living conditions, and your office declined because you wanted a larger judgment. Victor said, "We needed the full balance addressed." The judge's stare did not waver. "No, Mr. Halpern, you wanted leverage." Quote number 3. Like this video, if you've ever seen greed dress itself up as policy. Alicia's face changed. Something inside her broke open, not into tears yet, into disbelief. "They approved me," she said, almost to herself. "They really approved me." Nobody answered because nobody needed to. The paper was right there. All this time she had thought she failed, thought she filled out the forms wrong, thought the system had dropped her the way systems always seem to. Instead, the help had come. It had reached the landlord, and it had been turned into a bargaining chip. That realization hit harder than the code report. Because now this wasn't just about a bad apartment. It was about hope withheld. Alicia covered her mouth. Her shoulders shook once. She forced them still. "I kept checking my email," she said. "I kept refreshing it at work. I thought maybe I forgot a document." Judge Marquez said nothing. She just let the truth stand there in the room on its own legs. Then, as if the morning had not already done enough damage, another name was called from the back. "Excuse me, Your Honor." Everyone turned. It was the older woman with the quilted purse. She stood uncertainly. Judge Marquez asked, "Ma'am, are you a witness in this matter?" The woman clutched her purse strap. "My name is Dolores Pike, Unit 3, a same building. I didn't know if I should say anything." Victor's eyes shut for half a second. Judge Marquez said, "Come forward." Dolores was 63, retired cafeteria manager, white church shoes, lavender blouse, nerves all over her face. She took the oath with a trembling hand. "What do you know?" the judge asked. Dolores cleared her throat. "I know those walls got problems in that building. I know because mine do too. And I know Ms. Alicia ain't lying because I was there the morning that boy couldn't breathe." Alicia closed her eyes. Dolores kept going. "I heard the little girl screaming. I came out in my robe. The whole hallway smelled like a wet basement. Maintenance knew. We all knew. They painted over spots in July. My grandson took video." Brenda objected, but weakly now. "Hearsay as to the video." Judge Marquez said, "Do you have the video?" Dolores nodded. "On my phone." Marcus Dean took the phone, passed it up. The video was only 18 seconds. Grainy hallway footage taken by a teenager because teenagers film everything. But it showed what mattered. A maintenance worker rolling beige paint over a dark patch while another man held a box fan pointed at the wall. Off-screen, Dolores' grandson could be heard saying, "That's mold, man." One worker answered, "Just cover it before management gets here." The room exploded into whispers. Judge Marquez tapped the bench once. Silence. But the silence after that was different. It was the kind that follows a bell you can't unring. This moment would go viral, one of the interns whispered before catching herself. Everyone in the room knew she was right. Because we had now moved from allegation to proof, from proof to pattern, and from pattern to motive. Alicia looked smaller somehow, not because she had lost, because she had spent so long holding a disaster together by herself that being believed was making her buckle. Judge Marquez said, "Ms. Monroe, why didn't you bring witnesses sooner?" Alicia answered honestly, "I didn't want nobody from the building getting in trouble. People still live there." That sentence landed with more moral weight than any speech could have. She wasn't protecting herself, she was PR. Protecting neighbors, even after everything. Share this with someone who still believes the strongest people are not always the loudest. Then came the next turn. the one that added outrage to empathy and made the courtroom feel too small for what it was holding. Judge Marquez asked Brenda Cole whether the property had undergone any remediation after the inspector's report. Brenda conferred with Victor in a tense whisper. Victor's lips were tight now. Brenda straightened and said, "Ownership contests the extent of the findings." The judge lifted a brow. "That was not my question." Brenda tried again. Temporary patching was performed. Alicia let out a hollow laugh. "They taped plastic over Noah's vent." Dolores said from the witness chair, "Same in my place." The judge turned to Victor. "How many units in that building have received mold complaints this year?" Victor hesitated too long. Brenda answered for him, "I don't have that number." The judge looked back at the county report. The report references complaints in 14 units. That number hit the gallery like a slap. 14 units. 14 families. Not one struggling tenant, not one misunderstanding, a business model. Now the outrage had a shape. Alicia's voice came out lower than before, almost exhausted. "I wasn't trying to get out of paying. I was trying to keep my son alive." And there it was, quote number 4. Nobody in the courtroom would ever hear those words the same way again. Judge Marquez nodded once as if something inside the record had clicked into place. "The court will take a brief recess of 10 minutes. Counsel, do not leave. Ms. Monroe, remain available. Mr. Dean, please keep the gallery orderly." The gavel came down. People didn't move at first. Victor sat rigid, whispering furiously to Brenda. Dolores patted Alicia's shoulder on the way back. Alicia looked like she might collapse if anyone spoke to her too kindly. Marcus handed her a paper cup of water without a word. And then, just when it felt like the room needed space to breathe, a woman in a tan blazer hurried through the side door carrying a canvas tote and a folder thick with forms. "Tasha Reed," she said to the clerk. "Housing Stability Specialist. I'm here for Alicia Monroe." Alicia turned so fast her chair scraped the floor. "You came." Tasha stopped. "Of course I came." Tasha Reed was 38, county social worker, locks pulled into a neat twist, white sneakers under office slacks, the look of a woman who had been running all morning and was still mentally 3 steps ahead. She knew Alicia from Hope Atlanta. Or rather, she knew the version Alicia had let people see. Because here came the next revelation, the one that changed Alicia herself. Tasha sat beside her during recess and spoke quietly, but not so quietly that the nearby benches missed everything. "I called you 6 times, Tasha said. "I changed phones," Alicia whispered. "I emailed. My inbox was full. I left messages at your job." Alicia stared down. "I know." Tasha softened. "Why didn't you come in?" Alicia's answer took a few seconds. "Because I didn't want to sit in another office and explain my whole life just to maybe get told no." Tasha did not argue. Alicia kept going. "And because if I asked for help it would be real, it wouldn't be temporary anymore. It would mean I really couldn't fix it by myself." That was the moment of realization dialogue shift. Not a dramatic confession, just a brutally honest sentence from a woman whose pride had been keeping her upright. Tasha touched her arm. "Baby, asking for help isn't the same as failing." Alicia looked at her, eyes wet now. "It always felt like it." That line pulled something deep out of the room. You can trace a person's whole life through what they are ashamed to ask for. Alicia had grown up in Decatur moving between relatives. Age 12, mother sick. Age 16, working weekends at a beauty supply store. Age 18, 1 semester of community college interrupted by funeral bills. Age 23, Noah born. 27, Daisy born. For years her survival strategy had been simple: do not need more than you can carry. Now it was failing her. The recess ended. The gavel brought everyone back. Judge Marquez returned with a tighter expression. Before we proceed, I have reviewed the code report, the payment commitment, and the tenant's exhibits. I also want the record to reflect the presence of Ms. Tasha Reed from Hope, Atlanta. Tasha was sworn in. She testified that Alicia had been approved for emergency housing stabilization funds. She testified the landlord's office was contacted on September 14, September 17, and September 19. She testified the nonprofit could have covered a substantial portion of the arrears and potentially assisted with relocation if the unit was deemed unsafe. She testified that verification from the landlord's office was delayed, then effectively rejected once additional fees were added. Brenda Cole cross-examined. Ms. Reed, is it fair to say Ms. Monroe failed to complete some follow-up steps? Tasha did not flinch. It is fair to say she was working nights, caring for 2 sick children, trying not to be evicted and ashamed. If you want a shorter answer, yes, she missed steps. So did your client. The gallery hummed. Judge Marquez did not hide the fact that she appreciated candor. Ms. Reed, had the landlord cooperated, could eviction possibly have been avoided? Yes, Your Honor. Victor looked down for the first time. Then Judge Marquez asked the question nobody expected, and everybody needed. Ms. Monroe, earlier you came into this courtroom with a great deal of anger. Do you understand why? Alicia looked confused. Why what? Why you were angry before anyone had even denied you this morning. Alicia's eyes widened. It was the sort of question that does not belong to legal procedure, and yet sometimes belongs exactly there. She answered slowly, because I thought this was already decided. By whom? By everybody. Judge Marquez nodded, including you. Alicia's breath caught. Maybe. That was the emotional breakdown moment, and it happened without shouting. She started crying then, not graceful tears, not cinematic tears, the kind that make speech come out broken. I know how I sound, she said. I know I came in hot. I know I look like every story people tell themselves about women who fall behind. I know that. But I kept thinking if I let myself be scared, I was gonna fall apart, and if I fell apart, my kids would see it, and if they saw it, she couldn't finish. The room was still. Judge Marquez said the quietest thing of the day. Ms. Monroe, being frightened is not contempt, being poor is not fraud, and being behind is not the same as being worthless. Quote number 5. People would put that one on posters. Even Victor's lawyer stopped taking notes. Now we were deep in the story's middle, the place where lesser scripts lose steam. This one didn't, because just when the empathy was at its peak, another twist entered from the side door in the form of a uniform. Officer Reggie Sloan, Fulton County Sheriff's Civil Division, arrived holding a body cam printout request. He had served the original dispossessory notice at Alicia's apartment on September 22. Tasha had contacted his supervisor that morning after hearing the mold allegations, and the body cam footage had been pulled from archive. Judge Marquez allowed a brief review. If you believe evidence should speak louder than wealth, hit subscribe, because what that footage showed changed the emotional temperature of the entire courtroom. The monitor on the clerk's desk was angled so the court could see. Grainy wide-angle body cam. Time stamp. September 22, 2:16 p.m. Officer Sloan walked the outside breezeway of Edgewood Court Apartments. The camera caught chipped railings, dark water stains near the stairwell, children's bikes chained to a rusting fence. He knocked on Unit 2C. Alicia answered in work scrubs, hairnet still in place, Daisy on one hip. The little girl's rabbit hung upside down from her hand. From the body cam speaker came Noah's cough from inside the apartment, deep, persistent, too old a sound for a 7-year-old. Officer Sloan said on video, "Ma'am, I'm here to serve notice." Alicia took the papers without looking at them. She asked, "Can you smell that?" The officer hesitated. Even on video you could sense him catching it. that damp, mold-thick air that seems to coat the back of your throat. He stepped slightly inside because Daisy was reaching for the papers. The camera panned. A stained ceiling. A plastic sheet taped over part of the bedroom doorway. A small nebulizer machine on a folding TV tray. Children's drawings on the fridge with the corners curling from humidity. Then came the part that wrecked the room. Noah stepped into frame wearing a Too Big Braves t-shirt and holding an inhaler spacer. He looked directly at the officer and asked, in the flat voice of a child already tired of adult emergencies, "Are you the man making us leave?" Gasps, actual gasps. Marcus Dean looked away. Melanie Cho pressed her lips together. Even Brenda Cole's shoulders fell. The footage continued. Alicia, mortified, pulled Noah back gently. "Baby, no." But Noah kept staring at the camera. "Mama said we gotta be brave." Then the clip ended. Nobody in the room was ready for that. Alicia covered her face. Tasha wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Dolores was openly crying in the back row. One of the interns had stopped pretending to be objective. Judge Marquez removed her glasses again. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but the feeling underneath it was unmistakable. Children should not have to narrate adult neglect. That line would be quoted too. Victor shifted in his seat like his collar had suddenly become too tight. And yet, because real stories are never simple, the judge still had to confront the hard part. Alicia did owe money, some of it anyway. Why the law could not become pure feeling, that tension made everything sharper. "Ms. Monroe," Judge Marquez said after a long pause, "do you dispute that some rent remains unpaid?" Alicia lowered her hands. Her voice was raw now, stripped of the earlier edge. "No, Your Honor, I owe some, I know that." "How much do you believe you owe, excluding late fees and disputed charges?" Alicia looked to Tasha, then back to the bench. "Maybe 2 months, maybe a little more. I'm not saying I owe nothing. I'm saying I couldn't pay full rent for a place that was making my kids sick." There it was, humility without surrender, accountability without self-erasure. Judge Marquez nodded. "That is a very different statement than the one this courtroom heard at 9:12 a.m. Alicia managed the tiniest, saddest smile. "I've had a rough morning." A few wet laughs broke the tension. Then came the choice moment. Judge Marquez could sever the money claim from possession. She could set off damages. She could order mediation. She could sanction the landlord. She could dismiss entirely if retaliation or uninhabitability was proven strongly enough. But every option had consequences. She turned to Victor. "Mr. Halpern, do you wish to continue seeking possession of Unit 2C?" Everyone stared at him. This was the ultimate confrontation building toward the heart of the story. Not a scream, a choice. Victor adjusted his cuff. "Your Honor, with respect, this has become highly emotional. My company has obligations to all tenants. We cannot allow non-payment simply because someone presents a sympathetic narrative." That did it. The room froze around the cruelty of that word, narrative. As if Noah's inhaler was a plot device, as if mold was a metaphor, as if single motherhood was a performance genre. Judge Marquez leaned forward. "Mr. Halpern, let me be clear. Sympathy is not what altered the course of this hearing. Your own documents did." Victor opened his mouth. She kept going. "A county report documented unsafe conditions. Your office ignored certified notice. A nonprofit payment was delayed or rejected while fees escalated. Video evidence suggests cosmetic concealment of mold. Body cam footage corroborates the tenant's living conditions. If you continue to frame this as mere sentiment, you are not only insulting Ms. Monroe, you are insulting this court." Nobody made a sound. Victor's face had gone pale beneath the fluorescent lights. And then, because life loves an extra turn of the knife, Brenda Cole asked for a moment to confer privately with her client. The judge granted 2 minutes. What happened in that whisper was visible even from the back benches. Brenda spoke fast, low, controlled. Victor shook his head. She spoke again, firmer. He looked toward the gallery as if seeing, maybe for the first time, that he was no longer the respectable man collecting a debt. He was the man on the wrong side of a room full of witnesses. But he still didn't bend. When the hearing resumed, Brenda stood and said, "My client maintains his right to seek possession, though we are willing to waive certain fees in the interest of resolution." A murmur of disbelief rolled through the gallery. Waive certain fees? After all that? Alicia stared at him like she had just watched a person choose to stay lost. Judge Marquez's expression hardened into something almost surgical. Certain fees. Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked back at the report, then to Tasha, then to Alicia, then to Victor. Very well, she said, then the court will rule. You could hear somebody's bracelet click in the back row. That was it. If you've made it this far, comment with the word truth, because the next 3 minutes changed not only this case, but every person sitting there. Judge Marquez began slowly, making sure each point entered the record like a brick. First, this court finds credible the testimony of Ms. Monroe regarding repeated notice of dangerous conditions in the unit. Her testimony is corroborated by photographic evidence, third-party witness testimony, county inspection findings, and body camera footage. She turned a page. Second, the court finds that the plaintiff sought possession while on notice of substantial habitability issues affecting the premises, including conditions with documented potential impact on a minor child's respiratory health. Another page. Third, the court finds credible evidence that emergency rental assistance in the amount of $1,800 was not timely processed or accepted due to escalating charges, despite the ongoing condition dispute. Victor stared straight ahead now. Brenda no longer interrupted. Fourth, the judge said, late fees and ancillary charges in the claimed amount are denied in full. Alicia inhaled sharply. Fifth, this court finds that the value of the premises as provided to the tenant was materially impaired during the relevant period. Accordingly, the tenant is entitled to rent abatement offset against sums claim. Ed. Brenda stood. Your Honor, may I be heard on the calculation? In a moment. Judge Marquez made a few handwritten notes. After offset, denial of fees, and accounting for the approved but unprocessed assistance commitment, the court finds no basis to grant the plaintiff immediate possession on this record. The room broke, not loudly, more like all the air returned at once. Alicia put a hand over her mouth. Dolores cried out, "Thank you, Jesus," before catching herself. Marcus Dean didn't even shush her. Judge Marquez continued because she wasn't done. The dispossessory action is dismissed without possession awarded. The money claim, as presented, is denied. The court further refers this matter to County Housing Enforcement for additional review and directs the clerk to forward today's record. Victor looked stunned. Brenda looked like she had expected a bad outcome, but not this complete a collapse. And then came the thing the title promised, the thing no one in that courtroom saw coming. Judge Marquez looked at Alicia and asked, "Ms. Monroe, do you wish to return to that unit if relocation assistance is available?" Alicia's answer came fast, "No." Not angry, not dramatic, just final. The judge nodded, "Ms. Reed." Tasha stood. Hope Atlanta can place her in emergency family lodging today and potentially move her into a partner property within 72 hours if we expedite. Alicia turned so quickly it was almost painful to watch. Today. Tasha smiled through tears. Today. Alicia sat down hard because her legs gave out. People in the gallery were crying now. Openly. Shamelessly. Because after spending an hour watching a woman defend her right to exist in a room built for paperwork, The idea that she and her kids might sleep somewhere safe that same night was too much for everybody at once. Judge Marquez wasn't finished. "Ms. Monroe," she said, waiting until Alicia looked up, "you were not wrong to fight, but you were wrong to fight alone." Alicia nodded, sobbing now. "Yes, ma'am." Let that change today. That was the mercy moment, not the dismissal, not the sanctions, the invitation to stop carrying the entire disaster by herself. And still, there was one more twist. Victor Halpern, who had spent the morning defending fees and procedure and leverage, suddenly stood. "Your Honor," he said. No one knew where this was going. Judge Marquez said briefly. Victor swallowed. The smugness was gone. All that remained was a man standing in the wreckage of his own self-image. "I would like to say something to Ms. Monroe." Alicia's body stiffened. Brenda closed her eyes like she was praying he wouldn't make it worse. Judge Marquez held his gaze for a long second. "Proceed carefully." Victor turned. For the first time that day, he looked directly at Alicia and kept looking. "I came in here thinking this was about a balance due," he said. "And I told myself whatever happened in that apartment was management, not me, but my name is on that complaint. My company cashed those checks. My office signed those letters. So whether I wanted to feel responsible or not," he paused, voice rougher now, "I was." Nobody breathed. He continued, "I'm sorry. It was not enough. It could never be enough, but it was real." Alicia did not answer immediately. Judge Marquez watched closely. Victor went on. "I will release any claim to the security deposit and instruct counsel to cooperate fully with relocation documents today." Brenda blinked once, then nodded reluctantly. "We will." The room shifted again, not into forgiveness, into stunned recognition that something inside the man had cracked. And then Alicia did the most unexpected thing of all. She stood, wiping her face with the back of her hand, and said, "I'm still mad at you." A few wet laughs escaped. "But I heard you." Victor nodded once. Alicia took a breath. "And I don't want the maintenance guys who work there getting fired just because they take orders. I want the building fixed. I want those families safe. That's what I want." There was your forgiveness twist, not absolution, focus. Judge Marquez looked at Alicia with open respect now. "That is a wiser request than many courts receive." Alicia lowered her eyes. "I'm trying." This would have been enough for most stories. Judge rules, villain apologizes, family saved, cut to music, but the best courtroom dramas don't end at the ruling. They prove the ruling mattered. So now we jump forward. 3 weeks later, October 2025 gave way to November rain, and Alicia Monroe parked that same 2008 Corolla outside a new complex in East Point called Cedar Grove Flats. Not luxury, not magic, but dry walls, working vents, a lock that turned cleanly, a 2-bedroom unit with beige carpet, a dishwasher daisy treated like a spaceship, and windows that let in morning light instead of damp. Hope Atlanta helped with the deposit. A local church delivered twin mattresses. Tasha brought a grocery gift card and a list of utility numbers. Lourdes Pike sent over a crock-pot with a note that read, "No family starts over hungry." Noah's coughing didn't vanish overnight, but it eased. By late November, he had gone 18 straight days without using the rescue inhaler at school. His teacher, Ms. Jenna Patel, emailed Alicia to say he'd started participating in reading circles again. Daisy, meanwhile, informed everyone that the new apartment smelled like nothing, which turned out to be one of the highest compliments a child can give. Victor Halpern, he spent November and December in a storm of inspections, citations, and emergency meetings. The county expanded review of Edgewood Court. 4 additional tenants filed formal complaints. Local reporters called. A housing advocate posted clips from the hearing summary online. It spread faster than anyone expected. Children should not have to narrate adult neglect. Being behind is not the same as being worthless. Those lines ended up everywhere. This moment really did become the most talked about hearing in that courthouse all season. Victor's company hired a licensed remediation team, not out of sudden sainthood, out of pressure, out of exposure, out of consequences, but sometimes consequences are the first form of honesty. And yet the story kept deepening. In January 2026, the court received a letter. Handwritten blue ink, wide child-size spacing. It was addressed to Judge Elena Marquez, Courtroom 4B. The clerk read it first, then the judge. Then, with permission, it was shared with the people who had been part of that morning. It said, "Dear Judge Marquez, thank you for helping my mom when she was scared. We have a new house now and my room is blue and I can breathe better at night. Daisy still cries when she loses Bunny, but not when it rains. My mom smiles more in the kitchen. I want to be a lawyer or maybe a dinosaur doctor. Thank you for listening when grown-ups were being mean." From Noah Monroe. People who heard that letter said the judge sat very still for almost a full minute after reading it. A week later, Alicia sent her own update. She had picked up extra shifts. She had started meeting with a financial counselor through Hope Atlanta. She was taking one online class toward a nursing bridge program. Terrence, the children's father, had finally been located for a child support review. Progress there was slow. But for the first time in a long time, Alicia's life was moving in a direction that didn't feel like pure survival. And this part matters. She also admitted something hard. In her letter, she wrote, "I used to think being strong meant never letting anybody see I was drowning. Now I think being strong means saying I need help before the water gets over my kids' heads." That line belonged beside every other quote from this case. Hit that like button if you know someone who needs to hear that strength and vulnerability are not enemies. By February, Tasha Reed had used the Monroe case in 3 staff trainings, not with names, with lessons. Call more than once. Assume missed paperwork may be shame, not disinterest. Push harder when a landlord stalls. Ask what part of help feels dangerous to the client. That last question changed how several workers handled families on the edge. Judge Marquez, for her part, did not become a television judge. She did not give interviews. She did not grandstand. In fact, colleagues said the hearing affected her most in the weeks afterward because she kept returning to one detail: Noah asking the deputy if he was the man making them leave. Some sentences do not leave a room when the hearing ends. As for Dolores Pike, she became something of a quiet legend at Edgewood Court. She testified in follow-up proceedings. She helped 2 other tenants document conditions. Her grandson uploaded no more hallway videos, but he did help neighbors scan forms and email complaints from his school Chromebook. One elderly resident later said, "We thought we were stuck until Ms. Pike stood up." That's how change often starts, not with institutions, with one person deciding fear has had enough turns. And what about Alicia's so-called arrogance in the opening minutes of the hearing? Months later, she laughed about it with Tasha in a nonprofit waiting room while filling out a childcare voucher renewal. "I really came in there ready to fight everybody," she said. Tasha smiled. "You did." Alicia shook her head. "I wasn't arrogant, I was cornered." That distinction matters more than most people realize. Because when someone has spent months being ignored, billed, delayed, patronized, and blamed, confidence and panic can wear the same face. A sharp tone can hide terror. Defensiveness can be dignity on its last thread. That was the deeper psychology of this story, and it's exactly why it resonated so widely. People didn't cry because a judge was nice. They cried because somebody powerful finally recognized the full architecture of harm: the mold, the money, the shame, the system delays. The child who got sick, the mother who mistook asking for help as surrender, the landlord who mistook legal paperwork for moral cover, the neighbors who saw it all, the social worker who kept showing up. The judge who understood that justice without context is often just speed in a robe. This story had an outrage moment. It had disbelief. It had that satisfaction people crave when truth finally drags deceit into daylight. But what made it unforgettable was the compassion that entered after the truth, not instead of it. Anyone can punish. Real authority knows how to restore when restoration is possible and restrain when restraint is necessary. That's why one of Judge Marquez's lesser-known comments from after the hearing stayed with people too. She said it privately to a clerk, but it made its way around the building anyway. "The law cannot tuck a child into bed," she said, "but it should never be the reason that child loses one." That one never made the viral clips. Maybe it should have. By March 2026, Noah's attendance at school had improved enough that his principal mailed home a certificate for resilience and growth. Daisy had stopped asking whether rain meant they had to put bowls on the floor. Alicia framed Noah's letter draft, the one with the erased dinosaur doctor line, and taped it beside the refrigerator under a magnet shaped like a peach. Victor Halpern sold 2 of his smaller properties that spring and restructured management at Edgewood Court. Some people said it was image control. Maybe it was, but one former tenant put it better. "I don't care why a man finally fixes the roof if the roof gets fixed." There's wisdom in that too. Still, nobody in that courtroom forgot the original wound. Nobody pretended apology erased injury. That is another reason the story stayed honest. It never asked the audience to clap, because a powerful person discovered empathy after being cornered by evidence. It simply recorded that accountability cracked something open, and what came through next was better than what had been there before. Alicia would later say the strangest part of the whole experience was not winning. It was being seen all the way through. "Usually people either pity you or blame you," she told Tasha at a spring fundraiser. "That judge did neither. She just made everybody look." That right there is what millions of viewers respond to in stories like this. Not fantasy, clarity. The moment somebody says, "No, we are not reducing this woman to a balance sheet. No, we are not calling children collateral. No, we are not pretending administrative delay is neutral when it falls on the already drowning. No, we are not confusing patience with weakness or formality with justice." If you're watching this and you've ever had to choose between rent and medicine, between pride and asking, between being polite and being heard, this story was always bigger than one case number. It was about the thin line between survival and disaster. It was about how close ordinary people live to the edge. It was about what happens when one more fee, one more ignored email, one more delayed signature lands on a family already carrying too much. And it was about the quiet miracle that sometimes happens when the right person in the right chair refuses to look away. Months later, Alicia took Noah and Daisy back through downtown Atlanta on a Saturday afternoon. They weren't going to court. They were headed to Centennial Olympic Park because Noah had a school project and wanted city pictures. As they drove past the courthouse, Noah pointed and said, "That's where the judge helped us." Alicia corrected him gently. "No," she said, "that's where the judge listened. A lot of people helped us." That may be the most important lesson of all. Justice is rarely one person doing one dramatic thing. It is usually several people deciding not to abandon the truth at the same time. The tenant who documents, the neighbor who speaks, the worker who follows up, the officer who keeps the footage, the clerk who notices the late filing, the judge who reads every page, the audience willing to revise its first impression. Piece by piece, that is how an ordinary morning becomes a story millions would watch. And if you want one final image from this case, keep this one. It's evening in the new apartment. March light fading at the blinds. A pot of boxed macaroni on the stove. Daisy on the floor coloring a rabbit with purple ears. Noah at the table sounding out a library book about prehistoric birds. Alicia leaning against the counter in gray sweatpants and a college sweatshirt she found at Goodwill, Not because life is suddenly easy, but because tonight the ceiling is dry, the air is clean, and nobody is knocking with papers. Sometimes that is what transformation looks like. Not luxury, safety, not revenge, breathing room, not a miracle with violins, just enough stability for a mother to smile in her own kitchen again. And maybe that is why the story it's so hard, because in a world addicted to spectacle, the most emotional moment wasn't a scream or a collapse. It was a child writing that his mom smiles more in the kitchen now. You never forget a line like that. So let me ask you this. What would you have done if you were the judge? Would you have focused only on the money? Would you have sanctioned the landlord more harshly? Would you have forgiven the debt entirely? Drop a comment telling us the exact moment you think the courtroom changed. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe for more real justice moments where the truth takes longer than people expect, but lands harder than anyone forgets. Like this video, if you believe being poor should never make a person invisible. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that asking for help is not weakness. And if you want the next story, wait until you hear about the father who walked into court asking for custody to avoid child support, only to have a 12-year-old's testimony stop the room cold. You do not want to miss that one.